The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.
Tonight, we take a look at both sides of the province's spa plans for Ontario Place. Then, a check-in on the state of the waterfront in Ontario's capital city. That's next on the Agenda. More than 5.5 decades ago, Ontario Premier John Robarts thought kids who didn't have cottages or couldn't afford to go to summer camp should still have a place to go for some summer fun. And so the government built Ontario Place on the waterfront of the provincial capital. It was hugely popular. But as the years went by, Ontario Place fell into disrepair. You no doubt know that the Ford government has a plan to bring it back, and we'll debate that plan tonight with former Member of Parliament Adam Vaughan, who's been retained by the Therme Group to make the case for its plan, and Anne Elizabeth Sampson, co-chair of a community group called Ontario Place for All, which opposes the Therme plan. And it's good of both of you to join us here at TVO tonight. Okay, let me just get a brief answer from both of you off the top, and then we'll go deeper as we go along. Adam, essentially, what do you like about the Therme plan?
Well, lots to like about it. First and foremost, Ontario Place is coming back online, all of it, not just the West Island where our facility will be placed. There's 56 acres of new parkland across the space, 16 acres on our particular island, including rooftop parks. But I think what I really like about it is Therme. Therme builds really phenomenal facilities that are accessible, they're inexpensive. There are premium services if you want them, but when Ontario Place closed, it charged about $32 to get in, extra if you wanted to go to the water park. That's roughly the price you'll pay to get to Therme. But more importantly, some of the biggest concerns I had was whether or not the waterfront parks would be lost behind an admission gate the way it was when it was originally opened. And one of the first things to come down were the admission gates. And so people trying to get to the water's edge, going for a swim or a stroll or walking a dog or kayaking, will have access to 56 acres of new parkland, over 4,000 trees, all on the water's edge, with more places to swim and facilities and maintain trails. It's a great project and a good way to move forward on Ontario Place.
Okay. And Elizabeth, what don't you like about the sound of that?
Quite a few things. First of all, I think that there are a number of things Adam has just said that I would disagree with. But in general, I don't like the cost of this project is enormous, and I'm not just talking about the billions of dollars the Auditor General has said that our tax dollars will go towards the project, but it's incredibly expensive. It's expensive in that the project has been shepherded through by our Ontario government to the point where they've passed their very own law to eliminate all scrutiny and accountability around the project. There are a number of unknown costs that we haven't even heard about. And thanks to this protection by the government, there's very little we actually know is being built. So there's the issue of it's expensive, it's dollars expensive. I think many folks across Ontario, even if they never visit, they're paying for it. The other thing is that I find it incredibly short-sighted. I've looked at waterfronts in great cities around the world. They tend to be open access, really visionary, and really planned, co-created with community, which this one is not, and also iconic. I think you were talking about the original vision for Ontario Place, and I think that one of the really exciting things about it back then is that it was built for Ontarians by Ontarians with this Ontario kind of heritage idea of what did it mean to be Ontarian. This project is, it's a kind of a cookie cutter attraction that's being plopped down on Ontario Place, and as far as I understand, the company hopes to build them across North America.
Okay, let's hold there. Adam, you've heard some of the criticisms. Come on back.
Well, I mean, I think that the notion of co-creation is important. It's one of the reasons we have a strong partnership with the Mississaugas of the Credit. The Indigenous footprint at Ontario Place was never pronounced, even by Bill Davis and the original architects. That's changing, and it's going to be revealed shortly as just how deep that partnership is, and it's a good thing. It's one of the things Ontario Place for All is called for, and we've built that partnership. I think the other side of it is that one of the more important things that Ontario Place has become, since it was closed down, is a park. The success of Trillium Park shows us that free access to the waterfront is a value that needs to be sustained. That's happening. It's with a massive new park down there, the size of Trinity Bellwoods.
Free access to the waterfront.
Yeah, I mean, they're replacing the gates, which have been open for years since the closing of Ontario Place, with an admission building that you'll have to walk around to get across.
That's actually not true. It's
well,
the
access. I would love
to
see the actual plans that are coming forward.
But
That's
even the
one of
last iteration of the
challenges.
plan showed that there was access to the lake, and the protected access that the community has called for. We've responded, and we've actually shrunk the size of the building and grown the size of the green space. But what's more important is that you won't have to pay an admission price like you used to have to get down to see the water, the sunset over the lake, or to go for a swim.
Is that a victory for your side?
It's really hard to take. I mean, I think the other thing Adam just said is the size of Trinity Bellwoods, and this one is really one that's been fascinating to me. Trinity Bellwoods is 36 acres.
Yep.
Currently, the plan that I've last seen is 16 acres
That's
of public
on the West
space on the
Island.
West Island.
Right.
That's right. If you want to put Trinity Bellwoods on the West Island, I would be thrilled.
The price, no, it's when you quote the price of the Auditor General's report cites, it's for the redevelopment of all of Ontario Place. And while I'm not here to explain the provincial government's plan for the rest of it, but there's the Budweiser Theatre is being expanded to a year-round facility. That project, which the NDP opened in the 90s, is being built upon. The elimination of parking lots. There are 5 parking lots. Those parking lots are disappearing, and 56 acres of new open green space, a public park, will be built at the water's edge, free and accessible.
Can we just pick up on the parking lots? The original plan was to do an underwater parking lot at a cost of several hundred millions of dollars to be paid for by the people of Ontario. What is the status of that?
The city and the province are working on it. There are about 3,700 parking spots, surface parking lots in the vicinity of Ontario Place's bridges. Those are being consolidated, and I'll let the province and the city explain how they're going to be consolidated. The key here, though, is that those are 5 surface parking lots, which is one of the worst urban conditions you can create in a city, especially next to the water's edge. The runoff alone is detrimental to the environment. As they get consolidated and turned into green space, they have to reconfigure how the parking is going to work down there, because it's not just Ontario Place, it's also for the CNE and for BMO Field, and so how that gets reconfigured is important. But what's really one last point on that is that while the province and the city are deciding how to finance and build it, the revenue does not come to Therme or any other tenants at Ontario Place. The revenue comes right back to taxpayers. And so it's a business model that they're working out, a shared facility between the CNE and
Okay,
and
let me
Ontario
follow
Place.
up on something you said earlier, which is you saw the original vision of Ontario Place as being sort of made in Ontario by Ontarians for Ontarians. Do you have a problem with the fact that Therme is an international company and that's somehow inconsistent with Ontario?
I think it's a shame. I think not that it's a foreign company, but that we haven't really been truly consulted as Ontarians to the project. There's been very little public consultation. That which has been done has been very limited to what the people are allowed to comment on. So, for example, I attended 2 in-person consultations that the city put on, and then I've also attended the consultations with the province, and we were never allowed to comment on the Therme project or the West Island. So I believe that a truly visionary society, we're a waterfront city. We should be building something that is going to last into the future and truly be iconic for our.
You described our project beautifully.
But you're plopping what you've built in Romania on the shore of Lake Ontario.
Not at all. In fact, we've hired Diamond Schmidt Architects and TLA Studios in Toronto.
Yes, I'm familiar.
And we are working with a number of designers and advocates and
put a glass box, and you cut down 800 indigenous trees to put palm
let's
trees
deal
in
with
a
one at
glass
a time.
box.
But in terms of the design
It's
is
not
unique.
Ontarian.
The design is unique to the site and unique and builds on the heritage that's there. The Cinesphere and the pods are staying, and it creates a new Ontario Place. That's happening.
You know what? Rather than have you guys describe it, why don't we take a look at some of it?
Sure.
Here's some of Therme's video of what they anticipate going forward. Sheldon, roll it if you would.
The building has emerged as a public space, a roof space which is green, which is planted, which is an active, accessible, 24/7 public park space on the roof that is woven through with a campus that really create this fulsome integration of architecture and landscape. That's accompanied by a new, very large public beach the size of Sunnyside Beach, one of the largest new beaches on the whole of the waterfront.
What don't you like about what you see there?
I just find it very funny to see the renderings. It reminds me of Wonder Woman's airplane. The building, you can't actually see it in the renderings because it's clear. And it's hard for me to imagine that once it's built, it will be clear.
Well, good news. We've been listening and we've heard some of the concerns, and the size of the building is being edited and fit into the new landscape. And you'll see the way we've responded to some of the concerns that have been raised. And the good news is the park space is growing and continues to grow, and the places to swim are more numerous. And the maintenance of the paths and the change facilities and the shower facilities, which are 100% public and free to anybody in the city to use, all of that will be detailed as we move towards more detailed design. We're listening, and we
would love to see what you're doing. I think
coming.
Part of the problem is that a lot of it is in secret. It was
but on the one hand, you've got these very firm objections, and on the other hand, you say you haven't seen it. So which is it?
I'm going from what I saw in the development
Then let's talk about
application,
that.
and you are talking about evolution since that plan that I've seen.
Because
I also know that the
put it out there to get
province of
response.
Ontario, through the MZO and the Rebuilding Ontario Place Act, has eliminated the need, and in this upcoming Bill 5, further eliminating the need for anyone to consult with the public or get feedback from the public on this project.
But we're still listening and talking.
Well, we are being asked to trust a company that we don't know much about.
Well, get to know us.
We are being
Why
asked.
start with mistrust?
We are being asked to believe that this company will be able to manage what is essentially, they would like to claim, is public space for a 95-year lease. Now, I would like to think, if you ask me what's going to last 95 years, I think the City of Toronto will be around in 95 years. I think the province of Ontario will be around in 95 years. Do I think that Therme, the spa company that has not built anything like this in North America, will be around in 95 years? It's very difficult
Look,
for
I'm
me
not
to
going to
believe
cure
that.
you of your cynicism, but I mean, 95-year leases are normal for waterfront development projects. The Island Homes live on a 95-year lease. It's the way in which you need to structure a lease agreement to take it to the bank to get construction financing. Mm-hmm. There's nothing more different about that. There are terms in the contract of what happens if Therme doesn't last, and we're entirely responsible for returning the site to a natural state. All that's spelled out in the lease. But the issue is this. The issue that's really important is that the investment that's coming down there is going to transform Ontario Place into a place that everyone in Ontario can use year-round. And all the things that you spoke of, the rowing, the swimming, the walking, the dog walking, all of that is part of the plan and part of the vision for the new Ontario Place. So it doesn't ignore your concerns. In fact, it addresses your concerns. And what I'm hearing from you is what you'd rather have is more detail, and we're prepared to sit down and share those details with you and have a conversation. What we're not accepting of is this sort of constant push against us that somehow what we're doing down there is not what Ontario Place was designed to do. It was entirely designed to do this. The one difference is now it's going to be year-round.
It's a deeply unpopular project.
Amongst people who don't like it, yes, but if you talk to the wider province, we actually have a great deal of support.
When you respond with that the problem is that we don't understand, like we have spent quite a lot of time paying very close attention to any public information that is available to us.
Well, then let's take a look at some of the assertions you make.
You are saying 56 acres, you say we, you mean Therme?
Therme is
going to
responsible for
put
16
Trinity
acres.
Bellwoods on the waterfront.
No, but
you are putting Trinity Bellwoods
this is
with
the game.
BMO Field smack in the middle on the waterfront with a path around the outside
But those are all
edge.
falsehoods.
That is a misleading narrative.
No, because none of it's true and none of what we've said. You ascribe the cost of the whole project all to Therme. That's what all of your language
I'm
on your
following the Auditor General's report,
but the Auditor
which
General
outlines,
doesn't say that.
But it does outline the hundreds of millions of dollars that are going toward the project.
List one.
The site preparation.
The site preparation was the foundation for all 30 bids.
The additional $28 million of shoreline service.
But the shoreline services is to fortify the artificial islands which were dumped into Lake Ontario 50 years ago, which have badly eroded and caused flooding, and to create integrity around the entire site, the East Island, the West Island, the pods in particular. In order to protect that, you've got to refortify the shorelines because the storms in the lake have intensified through climate change. Redoing that has to happen with or without Therme. Otherwise, you end up like the beach you swim at, where you end up with rebar and signposts and construction waste eroding into the lake.
Let me try
that's
something
a problem. It has to be addressed, but it's not our addressing.
Okay. You know, Anne Elizabeth, that successive governments of all party stripes have taken a look at Ontario Place and not really done good by Ontario Place.
That's true.
So if a private company thinks it can do a better job, why not let them?
I think that I believe in much grander ambitions for our waterfront, and I find this concept extremely kind of out of date before it's even built.
Let me put that to Adam then. The notion of a privately run and owned spa on public lands in the waterfront. Is there anything inconsistent with the way Toronto does business?
That's the way the entire waterfront has been brought to life in this city for the better part of the last century. I mean, Centerville on the Toronto Island is a private enterprise working in a public park, as are the yacht clubs. It's not uncommon to see, especially in large green spaces along the water's edge, activation to occur that is both public and private in nature. The key is striking the right balance, giving people an opportunity to get a coffee or jump into the water or go to a facility in the middle of the winter and have a wonderful experience. That balance of public and private interest, that dynamic of co-developing parks along the water's edge, I've been doing that for 40 years in the city,
persuasive?
and I think it's a great way to build Toronto.
Is that persuasive?
It feels a little insincere at this point, to be honest, because there has been a huge amount of energy and community energy. You know, our movement has 60,000 supporters across Ontario who are interested in this project, and it feels that energy is being dismissed instead of embraced.
It's entirely
and
embraced.
So, but the province literally passed a law.
You ask for more
but
park,
how do
you
we
get
know?
more park.
How do we know?
Well, have a conversation with us. Meet with us. Just
Well,
because
they're
there's no
meeting with you right now.
I'm meeting with you here.
Just because there's no statutory meeting to be held doesn't mean you can't come in and say, "Can you show us the details?"
Sure. I guess I believe in transparent governance,
Well,
and
how
I believe
much more transparent do you
let's
want me to
let the
be?
sunlight in. Like, I would like to see the entire lease. I would like to know exactly
But the
what's
lease is
happening
being
with the
released.
parking
The lease is
negotiations.
being put out in the public
There was
record.
a lot missing in the release.
Look, at the end of the day, the question is, what kind of waterfront are we going to have, and how are we going to get there? Restoring Ontario Place has a price tag. Whether Therme is involved or not, restoring the pods in the Sinosphere has a price tag. Restoring the bridges has a price tag. What we're doing is partnering with the public sector to deliver resources to help facilitate the restoration of those iconic parts of Ontario Place that we all love,
Those
while
are
adding to
separate.
it and building on things like the success of Trillium Park, money which I helped secure when I was up in Ottawa, and dealing with it in a way that's consistent with the vision for the
I
waterfront,
ask you
which is a
about that?
clean, green waterfront for all.
I hear you. Adam, let me ask you the question that I know you've received a number of times, but you haven't been asked it here, so I'm going to pile on. I've heard so many people say the Adam Vaughan that I knew when he was in public life, when he was an elected politician, never would have been associated with something like this.
It's not true.
Not true, eh?
They came to see me before I left office when they were first putting a bid in under the Wynne government, when they were shortlisted with their project. It was much bigger then and much different then. It's changed. And I was fascinated by how this company manages and talks and thinks about water, and thought it was a great fit for the waterfront, because finally you have somebody who's heavily involved in geothermal in Europe, is massively involved in reforestation projects and managing how water impacts all of our lives. And I thought, this is a good fit for the waterfront. Let's see how the project evolves. But the notion that the waterfront would only ever be green parks, it just isn't true. I mean, the Harbourfront Centre is there. We have massive new parks coming in the East Portlands, another project which I helped facilitate. We have Tommy Thompson Park. We have the parks. We're cleaning the water, not just for our beaches, but for all the beaches inside the break wall. There are so many benefits that this project brings to the conversation that it shouldn't be an argument. And when we start talking about the cost of restoring Ontario Place, we're either going to let it fall into the water. I mean, one of the biggest costs right now is restoring the foundations of the pods. They've ascribed that as a subsidy to our company. I can assure you, we're not getting paid.
That's a separate project. That's not.
That's entirely part of the Attorney General's $2.2 billion, which you often quote as $2.3 billion, but it's $2.2 billion. And when you go through the list, it is not a subsidy to our company. What it is, it's a subsidy to Ontario Place to bring it back online. Restoring the Sinosphere, we agree with you, it should be. Restoring the pods, we agree with you, it should be. Animating the pods, we agree with you, it should be. But those aren't subsidies to us. That would happen with or without Therme. refortifying the shoreline, getting rid of the surface parking lots, adding new park space, adding new swim platforms, putting in real paths that are maintained throughout the winter. All of these are part of the cost. Some of which, about $2 billion, we bear, and there's about $2 billion the public bears. But it's also Live Nation, and it's also the new Science Center.
And
but
Elizabeth,
we don't get the subsidy. They share in the
equal
cost.
time
They
for
share
her,
in the
Adam.
benefits.
Come on, equal time for her. Go ahead.
Goodness, so much to respond to. You know, we're following what the Auditor General found on the cost of the project, and you are right. Some of it is definitely
not our project,
not
Ontario Place.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
So it's not all ours.
It is not. You
Important.
do not take all responsibility for that. That is for the province of
You should
Ontario.
edit your website then.
Okay. Goodness.
Well,
You know, we're a
keep-
group of volunteers.
keep-
We're not paid. I'm not paid to be here.
Well, you keep calling
Right?
it, but you,
We are a
you
group of
keep
volunteers
telling us
doing
we're
our
receiving
very
a 2.2 billion.
best.
That's the
We're
first
doing
time
our-
I've heard Ontario Place fall
We are doing
back off of that.
We
and I'm
are doing
glad.
our very best.
Now let's get to the rest of the list.
However, there are so many unknown costs that have yet to be determined for this project.
For example?
For example, we don't know the last mile solution that the government has promised to get people from the new subway to the door of the spa project.
Right.
We don't know the ultimate cost of the CSO, right?
What's CSO?
That's the
Combined sewer.
sewage.
The city sewer
the
that's
sewer.
currently leaking.
We don't know the cost to the traffic and the difficulty of moving around during the construction phase. We don't know so many things about this project.
So let's look
and
at the Auditor-
government
look at the Auditor
has
General's
done
report.
their very best to keep us from knowing anything. If this project is so wonderful, if it is as great
Ask
as you
them
say,
about
I would love to
I
be
can explain Therme.
completely shared.
But
I
ask
would love
them.
all. I would love
But the
all of
last
the
mile.
information.
But here's another one where they describe the cost of the last mile as a subsidy to Therme. The cost of the last mile is a strip that gets you from the GO station, the terminus of the Ontario line. It gets you down to the waterfront in a way that doesn't have you crossing the surface parking lots and the buildings that are closed.
Which can
at
be
the
a
same
half
time.
an hour walk.
It can be a long walk. Yeah. And so that project, which is currently, I think here in the Auditor's General Report forecast, I think it was at $60 million, but it's a park that the city is building on the exhibition grounds in a way that doesn't interfere with the Midway. They've told us that's a subsidy to our bottom line. It's not. It's a project which the city has been trying for 25 years to build. The fact that Ontario Place is coming back online has become the catalyst to get long-standing projects like fixing the combined sewer, like getting the last mile to the waterfront fixed. That's the way it's happening. Now, you can argue that the province has done what they've done and is doing what they're doing.
Yes,
but,
they are.
But you keep blaming us for that, and we're not the province.
No.
I work for a company that's building a facility on the West Island that's going to be delivering the 16-acre park and paying for it. It costs about $200 million. And then for the next 95 years, pay to maintain that so that the public has a park to go to that isn't abandoned or a ruin. That's a good deal for taxpayers, but it's a good project for the waterfront.
Sorry.
No,
I find it very funny that you think that I'm here to fight the spa company. You know,
Well,
I'm representing a large group of activists, community members who care deeply about the waterfront.
Your concern is
As to
My
beyond the
concern
spa.
is
So do
beyond
I.
the spa. The
Good.
province in the dead of
Well,
night.
I can leave now, and
in
you
the
can bring in
province
somebody
in
from
the
the
dead of
province.
night cut down 800 mature trees. Now, you and I both know that if you live in the city of Toronto and you want to cut down a tree, you are not allowed to do that.
So let's take
So
a look
let
at
me- there are a
so the
number-
report they
Hang on a
quote.
sec. Let's get focused. Let
That's
me focus
wrong.
on
You're
one thing.
wrong.
Since you're not here to defend the entire Ontario
No,
Place
but
project, you're here
when
to
she
defend the
quotes
spa.
a number which is wrong,
I get you.
the
and
record
we-
should be corrected.
And
right?
we've spoken to that. What about Therme itself? There were some issues around the company itself.
Yes.
And whether it was a Canadian arm of an international company or whether it had some alter egos along the way that were problematic. We got a couple of minutes left here. Let's focus on that.
Well, I don't know much about the company. I do know what I've read in the Auditor General's report, and then the New York Times recently did an investigative piece about Therme. It was always a little bit unclear how many facilities they ran in Europe before they got the contract. It appears through the New York Times report that, you know, they really have only built and run one facility from its inception. You can tell me if that's incorrect. It does seem that they have partnerships with others in Europe. So, you know, there's a lot we don't know. We don't know where the financing is coming. We don't know where the decisions are made.
But you said you read the New York Times article.
Yes.
So at the end, it talks about AHEAT being an Austrian company. It talks about Macquarie Capital, which is one of the world's largest infrastructure investors.
I believe it said for the Toronto project, the funding was not yet secure.
But the funding for Therme's operations globally, including in Canada, come from those sources identified at the end of the article. They raised the question at the start of the article. They answered at the end, but I guess you didn't get to that part of it.
Excuse me?
But the part that I think is most interesting here is that there are all these half-truths in that article that are easily explainable. Why the New York Times didn't do their fact-checking is beyond me. But I'll give you another one.
Stand by the story.
They don't. But I'll give you one of the points that was most interesting was when they said that the facility we own and operate in Erding in Munich, just outside of Munich, and the one in Bucharest somehow share the same logo. We own both of them. That's why they share the same logo. It's a pretty easy answer to a pretty silly question. But more than that, when asked about the ones,
right?
That's why they have the same logo now. But the issue of our capacity, we have built and we have designed and we have operated 6. The one family, which started the facility in Germany and has 5 other facilities across Europe, when the one family started to wind down their operation, we had already established from 2018 on a partnership, and we have absorbed most of their employees into our operations, and that is our capacity to operate. And that's why we've got facilities opening in Manchester and Washington and Dallas and Toronto.
You hopefully hope.
Well, the building permits have gone in Manchester.
In other words, Adam, this is a good company?
It's a good company.
This is a solid company? We don't need to worry about it?
The New York Times says we leveraged the Toronto bid to get financing for the Manchester bid. The construction documents, if you check the record, the construction documents for Manchester went in before our bid went in Ontario.
Yes, but you secured the financing after you got the Toronto
you secure the financing, as any good developer will tell you, as the projects get realized. You don't secure the funding and then design the project. It's an iterative process, and we're meeting all the milestones, and we're proceeding with good intention. One of the things that you don't know about Therme, which I think is one of the best parts about Therme, is their incredible record of presenting and creating public art events. The largest theater festival in Europe is the Therme project. There's an art festival in Berlin. There's the Serpentine Pavilion in London. There's Super Blue, an immersive art experience in Miami. So when the park is being built and when the park is being thought of, much like Trillium Park is now, the idea of programming arts events into the park, that's what that part of the lease that she says she hasn't seen speaks to. And that's what we plan to do on those sites, including working very closely with Indigenous partners to make sure that ceremonial space on the city's waterfront is finally an Indigenous space that they have a way of programming into.
Let me give you the last word here, and just by saying, are there any circumstances under which you could see your way to support some or any of what is going on down there? Or is it really beyond the pale?
I mean, I personally have things that I would agree to, but as a representative for a large group of people who have been following this closely, who have been really paying attention, our bigger concerns at this point are that Ontario Place is really being used as the canary in the coal mine on an assault on our democracy and a removal of the accountability mechanisms that we as citizens have for our shared assets, our shared resources. And so, as wonderful as Adam thinks this project is going to be, the fact is that it is tainted because it has been jammed through the public. It is being shoved down our throats with very little information.
Is that a Therme problem or a Doug Ford government problem?
It's a Doug Ford government problem, but in this case, Therme is really benefiting. They didn't have to conduct an environmental...
But that's like saying the Eaton Centre is benefiting from the Ontario line. I mean, at a certain point, give us our due. We're here to talk to you. We're here to build a great waterfront park. We'd like to make it better. We're happy to have the conversations.
I would love to have the conversation.
This might be a good spot for me to jump in and say, since you two have agreed to continue the conversation and listen to what each other has to say, maybe that's a good time for me to say, Anne Elizabeth Sampson and Adam Vaughan, thank you for coming into TVO and having part of that conversation with us here tonight.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
The waterfront of Ontario's capital city. It's like a Facebook relationship. It's complicated. The city has an interest, so does the province and the feds, and the agency, Waterfront Toronto, is supposed to figure out what to do with a 2.5-kilometer stretch of 2,000 acres representing billions of dollars of prime real estate. Given that many more people are going to be going down to spend time on the waterfront over the summer, we thought we'd ask, how's it all going? Let's find out from our guests. Here's Chris Glasik. He is Chief Planning and Design Officer of Waterfront Toronto. Ilana Altman, Co-Executive Director of the Bentway. That's a repurposed public space underneath the Gardiner Expressway. And Erica Ports, President and COO of Hoverlink, a new form of water-based transportation looking to boost tourism across the Golden Horseshoe. And it's great to see all you three here at TVO tonight for our discussion. Chris, I want to go to you first. Waterfront Toronto's mission, I gather, is to transform the waterfront. From what to what?
So we are about 25 years old. We were created by all three levels of government, as you were already describing, with the mission of really revitalizing especially the parts of the waterfront that are former industrial brownfield land. So everything kind of east of the Redpath Sugar Factory has been declining as an industrial base. And Waterfront Toronto was created to go in and figure out how to repurpose it and make it a thriving, exciting part of the rest of the city.
You making any progress?
We are making a lot of progress. We've been building housing, we've been building parks, we've been building bike paths and new streets, and we have some great development partners that are planning to do more.
More to come on all of those things. Ilana, the Bentway, a relatively new recreation space under the Gardiner Expressway. What role do you think it plays in the revitalization of the waterfront?
Well, I have to say, I think Chris is being a bit too modest. They've done a lot of great work, and we have one of the most exciting waterfronts to be found anywhere in North America. But we still have a big barrier to getting there, and that's the Gardiner Expressway. And I think that for too long, Toronto has been stuck in this binary debate where there's only two options. Does it stay or does it go? We at the Bentway have asked another question, which is how can it serve our city better? How can it do more? And that gave way to the redevelopment to date of about half a kilometre of space on the west end, just running alongside Fort York. It's now a thriving community hub, public space, recreational area. We throw wonderful community celebrations, host incredible public art year-round, and it's become a point of pride for the City of Toronto, as well as a really important connection to the waterfront.
I've gone skating there in the wintertime.
That's right, yeah.
It's cold.
It's cold, but it's a lot of fun.
It actually is fun. Yeah.
Skating, swirling between the bends, I mean, it's really an unforgettable experience.
How long's it been there now, the Bentway?
We've been about 7 years now.
7 years already.
Yeah.
And are there plans to expand it?
There is. So we've been working with the City of Toronto on the development of a larger vision for the full 7 kilometres. Last year at Council, they approved the Under-Gardiner Public Realm Plan, which is a high-level vision to extend the logic of the Bentway and its improvements all the way across the Gardiner corridor. And within that plan, the Bentway is expanding as well. 3 distinct new hub sites, one of which we are in design on already, a new hub site that will straddle between Danlicky Way and Spadina.
And we should say for those who are out of town and don't know it all that well, this, I think, is one of the sort of rare reimaginings of a public space that had a lot of private money in it as well, right?
That's right. I think we are very lucky around this table as Torontonians that we had some incredible civic leaders who were willing to take a leap of faith and make a historic investment into a public space below the Gardiner Expressway. The Matthews family, as well as urban designer Ken Greenberg, really led that effort. And sometimes I say that the Gardiner is Toronto's biggest pilot project that we've ever taken on, because who knew if people would want to spend time there? Who knew if things would grow there? But their investment, their belief in a new type of public space gave way to this brand new experiment, and Toronto has gotten on board.
Erica, what is Hoverlink?
Well, Hoverlink is a hovercraft project positioned to bring people between Niagara and Toronto in 30 minutes. 2 hovercrafts carrying 180 passengers sustainably, bikes, luggage, and really what it's meant to do is increase the level of tourism that we see between Niagara and Toronto through an attraction. Marine transit is not necessarily a novelty. It is in Ontario, but it isn't in other provinces across Canada. And so we're positioned to really support and extend the tourism seasonality in terms of being able to support the Bentway as an example and make sure that we can bring people ice skating from all parts of Ontario. It will eventually be a multimodal network, but right now we're working, well, that's a great question. We're working on establishing ports outside of just Niagara and Toronto across all of the Great Lakes. lake so that we can provide marine transit. Marine is green, it's sustainable. We're coming out of the gates with utilizing a biodiesel, and what that means is we're reducing carbon emissions and noxious substances out of the air.
Who owns it?
So it's a great question. Private investors, Canadian and U.S. investors are currently the owners. Our founder is Chris Morgan. He dreamt this up about 10 years ago in a pub in the UK with family that was involved in hovercraft piloting navigation.
We've never had this here in Ontario before, a hovercraft that takes people from A to B?
No. So we had a hovercraft in Mimico years ago. It was a very small scale one. It was actually quite successful until the TTC car went in. We've had hydrofoils. They cannot competently run on Lake Ontario 365 days a year. They're very much about a 6-month marine transit opportunity. They're also a really uncomfortable experience. Hovercraft glide across the air, the water.
We got video of this. Can
We do
show
have
this?
video.
Sheldon, let's bring this up if we can. Describe what we're seeing here.
Yeah, so what you're seeing right now is a hovercraft that transits between Portsmouth and the Isle of Wight. This is a smaller version of the craft that we're positioned to bring between Niagara and Toronto. Right now, she's actually hovering about 1 meter above, and so it's similar or akin to riding on a train or an airplane in terms of level of comfort, similar seats. Inside, you're going to have video, and so what we can establish is we can highlight certain tourism entities on both sides of the lake so that people that are visiting have a good and strong understanding of what's available to them to visit on either side, Niagara or Toronto. And what's really cool about that is they've moved about 30 million passengers without any incident. So they're super safe, they're very comfortable, climate controlled, and you can bring a bike on board if you like, or luggage.
How much do those things cost?
They're not cheap.
That's what I figured.
They're not cheap. And certainly that's probably one of our biggest challenges to date is the tariffs have impacted our ability to manufacture in the U.S. So we're looking at ways to manufacture here in Canada. We have amazing shipbuilders right here in the province of Ontario. And so HoverLink is now taking a step back to say, how can we work with the partners that we've established here in Ontario to actually build these crafts here?
Give me a number. Give me a number.
Approximately 18 million USD.
18 million a piece?
A piece.
Wow.
Yes.
Not for the faint of heart.
Not for the faint of heart.
Okay, good. Chris, let me get your view on, and maybe, I don't know, the rest of our program tonight is all about the spa. We focus on the spa. Is the spa part of your world that you need to worry about?
The spa, the Therme Spa, is actually on Ontario Place. It is not an active file for us. The province is really taking the lead on that. I think from our point of view, if the spa is successful at bringing lots of people to the waterfront, that would be a positive thing in terms of animating other aspects of the waterfront. And we were talking earlier about that becoming almost an anchor point on a system of water taxis around the harbor that would connect up all the different destinations, both on the kind of main shoreline and around the islands. So we could start to create an integrated transit network that brings commuters from farther away and helps people move around the harbor, reducing congestion on city streets.
But per se, does Waterfront Toronto have a position on whether the spa ought to go ahead or not?
Well, I think what we have said is through our design review panel, we gave some commentary. The plans were adjusted to address some of those issues, and we have stayed supportive of the province's overall effort to revitalize the island. Because remember, the spa project includes a whole upgrade to all of the public realm, much of which is in a pretty severely degraded state. And with those improvements, I think Ontario Place is going to become a really wonderful destination again.
Do the people behind the Bentway have a view on the advisability of the spa?
I mean, like Chris, I think that we are interested in a network of public spaces that help to promote better circulation across the waterfront, more activities that bring people down year-round. We have great skating facilities, but if we start to invest in more winter amenities in the West End and across the waterfront, that's only going to help tourism. That's only going to be another draw for locals. So we, like you, are really focused on the public realm redevelopment and how we can ensure that it's connective and well considered.
Erica, you got a view on the spa?
I think anything that brings additional additional tourism, it can be a positive thing. And I think as long as they take some of the advisement from Waterfront Toronto and the stakeholders of the waterfront, it can become a great place. As Chris has alluded to, there's many different activations that are going to come to the waterfront. There's about $15 billion worth of investment coming to Toronto's waterfront. We need more brand activations. We need a reason to come to Toronto. We need to elevate our opportunity for tourism in the city. It's remained stagnant for a number of years. About 26.5 million people come here year over year. We have an opportunity to grow that as an iconic waterfront destination, and what we need is to make our waterfront alive.
Chris, I want to ask you about something called Play Park.
Yes.
Because there's still a lot of people who think that the City of Toronto ends at the Gardiner Expressway and there's kind of nothing south of the Gardiner Expressway. And the notion of building a park where people would go play south of the Gardiner is going to, you know, for some people seem passing strange. I was down there actually not too long ago and I took some pictures of the model. Here we go. Do you want to take us through these pictures, Chris, and just let us know sort of what you got in mind?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Just to put this in context, so this sits within a much larger project that we're building right now, which is called the Portlands Flood Protection Project. So we have actually moved the mouth of the Don River about a half a kilometer south of its existing location in order to flood protect and naturalize a river that was put into a concrete channel. When we did that plan, we set aside a site as part of that for a major play park. There are a couple of these that have now been built in the world, and they really are a whole new way of looking about getting kids back into nature, off their computer screens, and onto some really challenging pieces of play
You
equipment.
should just say that's the location there. So we're sort of east, sort of halfway between the Don Valley Parkway in the east and Yonge Street in the west.
That's right, and you can see that red splotch is just a little bit north of a slip there, which is roughly where the new river mouth will be emptying, or actually already is emptying since the plug has come out. Here you see some of the very inventive pieces of play equipment that are being proposed. These are interactive pieces of play equipment. In order to use them, kids need to partner up to make the pumps work, to make the water features work. They have to work together. It really gets kids playing in a whole different way. And where these have been built, kids will spend hours and hours and hours here, and their parents play with them. This is not like the playgrounds that you and I grew up with.
How far along is this?
So the design work is well along. This is a philanthropic project that we hope to raise money for.
How much?
The project in total is about $75 million. The City of Toronto is already budgeting money for the pavilion, which would provide washrooms, food services, and an education space.
And you think it'll be done by what year?
Well, it's a little hard to say because we haven't raised the money yet. So, if we could raise the money in a year, we could have it built in about 3 years' time.
And is this expectation that you'll raise money from all levels of government for this?
Well, the hope was to raise money from philanthropists so that government didn't have to carry the full freight of this. It's not a cheap project to do. The model I mentioned, not the physical model, the prototype, is in the Gathering Place in Tulsa, Oklahoma. That project was paid for completely with philanthropy, about $450 million worth. Largest philanthropic gift for public space in the history of the United States. And the play park was the very center of the entire proposal.
Have the Matthewses got any money left to give to this?
Matthew's been incredibly generous, but what they've started is a real belief in the importance of public and private partnership and private agency for our public realm. And I think projects like the Bentway, projects like Play Park, they're going to need many different sources, many different levels of buy-in. But we all have to be committed to our city if we want things to change and we want to be a world-class city.
Could the hovercraft fit in one of those slips in there, and could this be another spot on the itinerary?
So we have looked at various opportunities along the waterfront, and there are other spots where we can position what we call a landing pad or a hover pad. They're much like a floating dock, and what's unique about that is we call it like a little mini bus stop of sorts. And so we could position landing pads all along the waterfront, and the whole concept of Toronto's waterfront is to open it up to all Ontarians. And so we're really hoping to bring people from Oshawa, people from Niagara, people from Hamilton, and provide that opportunity to come into downtown Toronto. A lot of us in the Niagara region that live there have avoided Toronto now for the last several of years because of the
Too hard to get
congestion.
here. Yeah.
Too difficult, unpredictable, and yet many of us loved coming to the city years ago. We would come in for dinner, theater events, whatever was going on, a baseball game. No longer is that something that you just say, yeah, let's go. You think, 6 hours there and back of driving. We're going to pass tonight. We're going to stay home on the couch. We want to get people up and going. We can accommodate bikes. And so what that means is sustainable transit is critical. It's critical to provide that infrastructure, and we can do that all along the waterfront.
Got a price point?
So that's a great question. I often get asked that. We're going to be doing some stated preference surveys over the next year to really understand what's people's willingness to pay. So we have to balance, obviously, we are not subsidized by the government. And so in part, we have to make sure that we can operationalize this, make sure it's profitable, but also make sure it's affordable so that we see a mode shift. This is a new way of traveling for a lot of people in Ontario. If you live in British Columbia, you think nothing of hopping on a ferry and transiting across the water. This will be a new way for a lot of people. We need to help people understand what it's like. So we'll have free events, bring a friend for free. We'll have family passes. We will be partnering with major tourism entities. Alana and I were just talking about a partnership potentially with the Bentway. We've had conversations with Distillery District as an example, Harbourfront Centre, the Shaw Festival. How can we partner with all of these amazing tourism entities to offer attractions that can be pulled together within a half an hour?
The one thing I didn't realize is, and you know, I assume this was kind of like a vaporetto that just sort of comes to the edge of a dock. But the thing you showed in the video, that goes right up on the land. Is that the plan for Toronto and Niagara as well?
So in Niagara, we have greenfield space. We have 18 acres that's now shovel ready. We've been really busy over the last couple of years ensuring that we were prepared to operationalize this. So on there, it actually comes up and onto land. In Toronto, we come about an inch or two over a freeboard, and that is on a landing pad. It's almost like a floating dock, similarly used in places like British Columbia. And so what we're doing is we're taking a technology that's tried, tested, and proven, and we're just adapting it. What that does is it allows us to go into any marina without deep water dredging and no environmental impacts. We don't create, wake, or wash, and we can function 365 days a year. These craft have been approved across Lake Ontario pretty much no matter what the weather is, unless there's about 40 knot gusts of wind, which is about 75 kilometers an hour. That may ground us, but outside of that, we can crest over an 8-foot wave.
Gotcha. We got to talk about the elephant in the room, kids. And the elephant in the room is the Gardiner Expressway, because I know you've built a beautiful space underneath the Gardiner, but it has obviously occurred to you at some point that you probably could do more and better if that highway weren't even there at all. What's your view on what should be done with that?
Well, I'm an urbanist at heart, so I'm never going to advocate for highways first. But as I said earlier, I really do think that we have to stop thinking about this as an either or. What the Bentway has proven is that this highway can continue to serve its mobility function above and be a point of connection, a public space, a point of pride for the City of Toronto below. And as cities grow and change and we densify, that's an important attitude to take to the Gardiner Expressway, but it's just an important attitude to have, because we're not going to have the luxury of tabula rasa sites, of being able to tear things down in the service of building something new. So how we embed our values as a city today into infrastructure that was built in the 50s and 60s, that's something that we have to be asking ourselves for the Gardiner and beyond. One of the things that I am really excited about is we work with infrastructure reuse projects all across the globe. The High Line in New York, Waterloo Greenway in Austin, and most of those cities have waited till that structure came to the end of its natural life as a mobility structure before they've reinvested. So it was a train track and now it's a public park. What we're doing in Toronto is we're actually saying we can have both. We don't have to turn our backs on our mobility needs to have public space. We can find ways to combine those things. And as a result, Toronto's actually really leading the world globally in terms of thinking about hybrid infrastructure. And what I hope is it's not just about the structures that we're reinvesting in, it's about how we're building new infrastructure now.
Chris, the Gardiner, what would you do?
Well, we actually did an environmental assessment for exactly what to do with it several years ago. And the conclusion that we finally arrived at was on the east end, rather than try to eliminate it, rebuild it, but in a different location. So shift it north, up close to the rail corridor that's already there. And what that does by the Keating Channel is it frees up about 20 acres of land for redevelopment, and it allows the Keating Channel, which is this relic of kind of early 20th century engineering focused approach to nature, to be reimagined as a great urban canal. And so that's the vision we have for it, with development on each side, restaurants, cafes, clubs, entertainment, with a a beautiful waterway in the center, boats going up and down. That depends on rebuilding the Gardiner North, which we call the hybrid option. And we are very hopeful that that hybrid option is what will be pursued in the New Deal, where the Gardiner upload has been given to the province. We really hope that they'll be able to follow through and deliver on that shift. Because once that's done, and I think you see this elsewhere on the waterfront, with the amount of development that's happened, the Gardiner's starting to disappear. And if we build this the way we're talking about, the Gardiner will disappear from that area too, and it'll unlock this great waterfront asset that right now looks very sad and has highway columns coming right down into it and seems a bit miserable, but doesn't have to be miserable. It could be a fantastic urban canal. Think the Chicago River. Chicago River is a fantastic, very powerful urban environment. That's the kind of vision we have for that Keating Channel. Could be our own version of that. But planning all the great public space first, Chicago didn't do that. They've had to retrofit it. They've done a remarkable job. The Riverwalk is one of the most fabulous pieces of urban intervention that I think I've ever seen. But we're planning it from the very beginning.
That hybrid option you just mentioned for moving the Gardiner, how long? Is it a kilometer? Not even?
About a little bit less.
A little less than a kilometer? How much would that cost?
Well, I haven't looked at the price tag in a while, and with all the costs escalation that's happened, it's a little hard to say, but I think it was around $1 billion or so.
I was just going to say, I think it's $1 billion.
Yeah, but it may be more than that by now. But something has to be done. It can't just be left. So there's no option that says don't invest in it. Like all the other segments of the Gardiner that are being rebuilt, it is also at the end of its life. So something has to be done with it. So let's spend a little extra and move it.
How, Ilana, for you, we're trying to figure out a new waterfront here that includes housing, parkland, amenities, cultural attractions, stuff to do, private business, public space. The ratio of all of those things to one another matters a lot. Are we getting that right?
Well, we're having a really important conversation in the city about housing. We're in a crisis. There's no doubt about that. We have to build more housing. But if we are only talking about delivering units, then we're not having the right conversation, because you need to build affordable neighborhoods. Within a 5 to 10 minute walk of the Bentway Phase 1 site, there are 100,000 people who live in high-rise, dense neighborhoods. That is a city in and of itself. And you start to think about how that multiplies across the larger extent of the Gardiner. It's a huge population. And those people who are living in high-rise buildings, they need access to public space, they need social infrastructure, they need recreational amenities. So we really see the work that we're doing as complementing the push for housing and ensuring that we're creating complete communities. And we see it every day at the Bentway. It is people's backyard park. People come, they walk their dogs, they have baby showers, they teach their kids how to ride bikes. And that's what makes it amazing, is that the community meets there, especially during COVID. It was a lifeline to all of those people living in the area. But a lot of people found it during that period of time and continue to still make it part of their daily routine.
Erica, as you look at it, is it coming together in the way it should be?
I think everything takes a little bit longer than you initially think it's going to, but now it's coming together. Now that we have established agreements on both sides of the lake, they're very long-term agreements, and so it allows us to really establish the network and see the mode shift, which will take a couple of years. So I do believe it's coming together now. We feel the momentum. Certainly tariffs have impacted us, as I had said earlier, but what we're seeing the momentum around, and just to parlay onto the conversation around affordable housing, is we enable affordable housing. We enable people to live in St. Catharines, live in the Niagara region, more affordable housing, and yet work in downtown Toronto with a 30-minute commute instead of 3 hours. And so we enable various different things that improve the quality of life of all Ontarians, and I really truly believe that this will become a legacy project. When? So we're probably 2 to 3 years out at this point in time. The manufacturing piece is our largest hurdle, and in part, the T word, or the double T word of tariffs and Trump, have certainly impacted our business. We're looking at various ways around that at this point.
Gotcha. Let me put the same question to you about how you get the balance right. Parkland, housing, amenities, et cetera, et cetera. Transit, I mean, the list goes on. How do you know whether you're getting the balance right?
Well, I think when you look at what we're doing on Aquaman-Minising, which used to be called Villiers Island, we've set aside a huge amount of land for parks. But I think it's going to be the right amount, because we've created a true river valley park system on either side of this new canal, or new river channel. And that is going to serve not only the approximately 15,000 people who will move into Aquaman-Minising once the development happens, but it will serve the future neighborhoods of the Portlands as well. So we're adding about 60 acres of parkland, much of which is going to open this summer, and a second phase will open next summer. And we expect that a lot of people will go. Once this park is open, it's anticipated there'll be about 1 million people using this parkland. And that's not including the play park that we talked about earlier. That piece is funded and nearly finished and will come online. Parks also help spur development. We saw that happen with the Pan Am Athletes Village. We built Corktown Common, and it actually increased the real estate values there and made it an even more attractive place to build.
I know what you're saying, but of course we all remember Sidewalk Labs, and we remember what a disaster that turned out to be. And I think a lot of people are spooked by that precedent, and they're not as confident as you would like them to be that this is all going to work out in the end. To which you say what?
Well, I think what we've done is we've gone back to our first principles. So what we're doing now is very much like we did at West Don Lands, which has been hugely successful. That includes the Canary District, the Pan Am Athletes Village. That was all master planned by Waterfront Toronto and has turned out to be, I think, a terrific neighborhood. Same with the East Bayfront, which we've been building out. It's not finished yet. You may have noticed the Aqua Luna condo is almost finishing. They're this bronze condominium with these beautiful curved glass windows and beautiful balconies. That's part of a whole new community. Between the two of them, that's about 17,000 new people who've moved to the waterfront. It's a very desirable place to live. So I think the housing model's working. And to the point Alana made about affordability, we are targeting 30% affordability for all of our projects. So the former Sidewalk Lab site, the Quayside site, will have 30% affordable housing. We're working very closely with CMHC and with the City Housing Agency on that, and we're confident that that's going to come along. The biggest question is going to be how fast can it get done, given the new market that we are all living in. But we are, we believe, poised to start one of the first affordable housing buildings quite soon. So hopefully you'll see groundbreak there.
Chris, I have one last question for you. How's your mother-in-law?
She's great. She was up in Ottawa for the throne speech.
I was just going to say, do you want to tell people who your mother-in-law is?
Sure. My mother-in-law is Adrienne Clarkson, former Governor General. I haven't spoken to her since she went there, but I imagine she had a very interesting time sitting with all of those other folks.
Do you have to call her Your Excellency?
No, I just call her Popo because that is the Chinese term for mother's mother. And as everyone knows, she is of Hong Kong origin, and so my kids call her Popo, so we all call her Popo.
Outstanding. Yeah. Give her our best.
I will.
Ilana Altman from the Bentway, we thank you for coming in today. Chris Glasik from Waterfront Ontario, Erica Ports from Hoverlink. Looking forward to seeing that up and going. 18 million a pop?
18 million pop.
Oh my goodness,
Not
okay.
bad.
Good luck. Thanks everybody, appreciate it.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
And that is the agenda for Wednesday, May 28th, 2025. Tomorrow, we look at the cost of tariffs on your pocketbook. Hope you'll join us for that. I'm Steve Paikin. Thanks for watching TVO, for joining us online at tvo.org, and we'll see you again tomorrow.